The needle hovered inches from Max's graying muzzle. Dr. Roberts's hand trembled slightly as the aged German shepherd convulsed on the metal table, his once powerful frame now frail and racked with pain. "It's time," Linda whispered, her voice breaking. "He's suffered enough." Max's cloudy eyes remained fixed on the window, as if waiting for someone who would never come. The seizure, his third today, had finally convinced the staff that kindness meant letting go. Outside, dust billowed behind an approaching sedan. Its tires crunched urgently on gravel as it skidded to a stop. A weathered man emerged, leaning heavily on a cane. Despite his 72 years, Jack Miller moved with desperate purpose. "Stop!" he called, voice carrying the authority of his 30 years as a K-9 officer. "That's my dog." But the needle was already descending toward Max's vein, carrying merciful oblivion. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Jack Miller had been counting the days, 2,557 of them to be exact. 7 years since they'd forced him to surrender Max, his partner of 6 years on the K-9 narcotics unit of the Lakewood Police Department. 7 years of nightmares, of waking up reaching for the German shepherd who'd slept at the foot of his bed through 2 promotions, 1 divorce, and countless nights when the bottle seemed like his only friend. The modest bungalow on Elm Street still bore signs of Max's presence. The scratched back door where he'd signal his need to go out, the worn spot on the living room carpet where he'd lie during Jack's favorite baseball games, the cedar chest filled with medals and commendations they'd earned together. Jack had left everything exactly as it was the day they took Max, as if preserving a museum to their partnership. Retirement had come early for Jack at 65, just months after losing Max. The department had called it a medical separation, the official term when they decided a K-9 was no longer fit for duty. Max had taken a knife wound protecting Jack during a warehouse raid, and though he'd recovered, the department deemed him compromised. The new policy stated retired K-9s would be relocated to specialized facilities. No exceptions. Just equipment, Chief Anderson had told him when Jack begged to adopt Max. "Department property, Miller. I'm sorry, but those are the rules now." Jack had fought through channels, filed appeals, petitioned the review board, even mortgaged his house to hire a lawyer. But the system designed to respect authority wasn't built to accommodate the bond between a man and his dog. His case was dismissed with bureaucratic efficiency, and Max vanished into the system. Martha, Jack's wife of 40 years, had tried to understand his obsession. "He was just a dog, Jack," she'd said one night, immediately regretting her words when she saw his face harden. She never mentioned it again, even as Jack depleted their savings on private investigators. Even as their daughter Sarah stopped visiting, frustrated by her father's single-minded focus. Even as Martha's cancer progressed and Jack divided his time between her hospital room and his search. After Martha passed, Jack's world narrowed further. Sarah's occasional phone calls became his only family contact. His pension checks went toward more searches. Former colleagues stopped inviting him to retirement gatherings, tired of hearing the same questions about Max's whereabouts. Then yesterday, while scanning the Sunday paper, Jack had frozen at the sight of a small photograph accompanying an article about a facility called Sunrise Hills. Though the image was grainy, he'd recognize those eyes anywhere. Intelligent, loyal eyes that had looked to him for direction thousands of times, eyes now clouded with age but unmistakably belonging to Max. "I found you, partner," Jack had whispered, his gnarled hands trembling as he cut out the article. "I'm coming." The antiseptic smell of the examination room burned Jack's nostrils as he lurched forward, his cane clattering to the floor. Dr. Roberts jerked back, the syringe still clutched in his hand, startled by the intrusion. "Sir, you can't be in here," the veterinarian stammered, regaining his composure. "This is a restricted area." Jack ignored him, his attention fixed solely on the trembling form on the table. Max lay on his side, breathing heavily, his once robust body now thin and marked with the indignities of age. But when the dog's rheumy eyes found Jack's, something flickered there, a ghost of recognition that made Jack's heart squeeze painfully in his chest. "That's my dog," Jack repeated, softer now, moving closer despite the protestations of the staff. "We were partners. LAPD K9 unit." Linda stepped between them, her face a mixture of confusion and caution. "Sir, this dog has been a resident here for 7 years. He's department property, transferred legally to our facility." "I know exactly how long he's been here," Jack said, his voice cracking. 2,557 days. I've counted every single one of them." Something in his tone made Linda pause. She studied his face. The deep lines etched by grief and determination, the unwavering focus in his pale blue eyes. "You're Jack Miller," she said suddenly, recognition dawning. "The officer from the article." Jack nodded, surprised. "What article?" "There was a piece in the Police Gazette last year about handlers separated from their K9s. You were mentioned." Linda glanced at Dr. Roberts, who still held the syringe. "Give us a minute, please." The veterinarian hesitated but placed the syringe on a tray and stepped back. Max's seizure had subsided, but he remained listless, his breathing labored. "He has a brain tumor," Linda explained quietly. "The seizures started 3 months ago. They're getting worse and more frequent. We've been treating him with medication, but—" Jack moved to the table, gently placing a weathered hand on Max's head. The dog's tail thumped weakly against the metal surface, once, twice. "He knows me," Jack whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "After all this time, he still knows me." Linda watched the interaction, her professional demeanor softening. "I can give you some time with him, but I need to be clear. His condition is terminal. We were proceeding with humane euthanasia because his quality of life has deteriorated significantly." "I want to take him home," Jack said firmly. "Let him live his last days with me." Linda sighed. "Mr. Miller, it's not that simple. There are legal protocols, ownership issues. Max is still technically property of the Lakewood PD." "Property," Jack spat the word like it was poison. "He saved my life, saved countless others, found more drugs than any other K9 in the department's history." "And you're telling me he's just property?" Before Linda could respond, the door opened, and a tall man in an expensive suit entered. His face hardened when he saw Jack. "Who authorized this visitor?" he demanded, looking at Linda. "Richard, this is Jack Miller. He was Max's handler before—" "I know who he is," Richard cut her off, "and he has no clearance to be here. Security." Jack straightened as much as his aged spine would allow. "I'm not leaving him." "Yes, you are," Richard countered coldly. "Sunrise Hills has an exclusive contract with 12 police departments, including Lakewood. These animals remain under our jurisdiction until formal release or death." 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Jack looked down at Max, who had managed to lift his head slightly, eyes fixed on his former partner. "I'll be back," Jack promised softly, stroking Max's ear the way he used to when they prepared for difficult operations. "Stay strong, buddy." As the guards escorted Jack from the room, Linda followed them into the hallway. "Wait," she called, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Meet me at Carson's Diner on Maple Street. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. There's something you should know." Jack nodded, memorizing the information as the guards led him through the facility's sterile corridors. Outside, the summer heat hit him like a physical force, but he barely noticed. His mind was racing, processing what he'd seen. Max was alive but suffering. And something about this place, about Richard's reaction, felt wrong. In his car, Jack sat for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. The brief reunion had unleashed a flood of memories. Max as a young dog, eager and brilliant during training. Max alerting to hidden contraband that human officers had missed. Max taking down an armed suspect who had Jack in his sights. "This isn't over," Jack muttered, starting the engine. The next morning, Jack arrived at Carson's diner 20 minutes early, selecting a booth with a clear view of both the entrance and the parking lot, old habits from his police days. He ordered coffee but left it untouched, too anxious to risk making his trembling hands worse. At precisely 7 a.m., Linda entered, scanning the diner before spotting Jack. She slid into the booth across from him, her expression guarded. "I'm risking my job being here," she began without preamble. "I appreciate it," Jack replied. "But why help me?" Linda hesitated, then reached into her purse and removed a worn photograph, sliding it across the table. Jack recognized it immediately, a young police officer in dress uniform standing proudly beside an older man who was clearly Jack. "Daniel Carson," Jack said softly. "My rookie. He was a good kid." "He was my brother," Linda revealed. "He always spoke highly of you. And Max said you three were the best team in the department." Jack's throat tightened. Daniel had died in a traffic stop gone wrong just 2 years after joining the force. Jack had attended the funeral, but in his grief he hadn't made the connection to Linda. "I'm sorry," he offered inadequately. "That's not why I asked you here," Linda said, reclaiming the photo. "After seeing you yesterday, I pulled Max's file. There are inconsistencies that never made sense to me. Most retired canines go to municipal facilities or are adopted by their handlers. Max was specifically directed to Sunrise Hills with unusual stipulations for his care and monitoring." "What kind of stipulations?" "Regular blood work, cognitive testing, restricted access. He's one of 12 dogs with similar parameters, all from high-profile cases." Linda lowered her voice. "And all separated from their handlers against standard protocol." Jack leaned forward. "Who authorized this?" "The paperwork has multiple signatures, but the primary authorization came from Senator William Hayes." "Hayes?" Jack frowned. "The head of the Public Safety Committee? What's his interest in retired police dogs?" "I don't know," Linda admitted. "But Sunrise Hills isn't just a retirement facility. The East Wing houses a research center funded by a private corporation called NeuroVet Dynamics. They specialize in studying canine cognition and memory, particularly in working dogs." Jack's blood ran cold. "They're experimenting on them?" "Not physically, at least not that I've seen. It's mostly behavioral studies, cognitive assessments, but they're very secretive about their data and methodology." Linda glanced around nervously. "Richard Mercer, the man you met yesterday, is the liaison between NeuroVet and the facility." "And Max? What have they been doing with him?" "His file shows regular sessions in the research wing until his health declined." But here's what's strange. His transfer to Sunrise Hills occurred immediately after the West Side warehouse raid. That's not a coincidence, Jack. The West Side warehouse. Jack hadn't thought about that case in years. It should have been a routine drug bust, but Max had behaved oddly, ignoring the obvious drug stashes and instead fixating on a hidden wall panel. Behind it, they'd discovered not drugs, but documents, financial records linking several high-ranking officials to offshore accounts. The case had been quickly transferred to Internal Affairs, and within weeks, Max had been deemed medically unfit and removed from service. "They took him because of what he found," Jack said, slowly, the pieces falling into place. "They were afraid he'd find more." "Or that you would use what he found to keep looking," Linda suggested. "Dogs can't testify, but their handlers can follow evidence." Jack sat back, his mind reeling. For 7 years, he'd believed Max's reassignment was due to departmental bureaucracy, budget cuts, and impersonal policies. The truth was far more sinister. His partner had been deliberately taken to silence an investigation. "I need proof," Jack said finally. "Something concrete I can take to the press or the FBI. "That's why I brought this." Linda slid a USB drive across the table. "Security footage from Max's cognitive sessions. I don't know what's on it. The files are encrypted. But my brother always said if something feels wrong, gather evidence first, ask questions later." Jack pocketed the drive. "How's Max today?" Linda's expression softened with sympathy. "Stable for now. The medication is controlling the seizures temporarily, but his prognosis hasn't changed." "How long does he have?" "Weeks, maybe a month. I convinced Richard to postpone euthanasia since Max seemed to rally after seeing you." "But I can't delay it indefinitely." Jack nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "I need to see him again." "That's impossible. Richard has explicitly banned you from the facility." "Then I'll go through official channels. I still have friends in the department, people who remember Max." Jack met Linda's gaze steadily. "And I need one more favor." "What?" "A current photo of Max. Something I can show people who might help." Linda hesitated, then nodded. "I'll try. But be careful, Jack. Whatever got Max separated from you involved powerful people. They won't want this exposed." As they parted ways outside the diner, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. The crushing weight of helplessness that had defined his retirement was lifting, replaced by a familiar determination. Someone had used their power to take Max from him, to exploit his partner's remarkable abilities for their own ends. "Time to return the favor," Jack muttered as he drove home, the USB drive a heavy presence in his pocket. Jack's hands trembled as he inserted Linda's USB drive into his ancient desktop computer. The machine whirred and clicked, protesting the sudden activity after months of disuse. Like its owner, the computer had been slowly surrendering to obsolescence, a relic of another time. The screen flickered to life, displaying a folder containing dozens of video files, each labeled with dates and serial numbers. As Linda had warned, they were encrypted, inaccessible without specialized software or expertise Jack didn't possess. He slumped back in his chair, frustrated by the technological barrier between him and potential answers. His cell phone rang, startling him. The caller ID displayed Sarah Miller, his daughter's name appearing on his screen for the first time in months. Jack hesitated before answering, uncertain what fresh disappointment the call might bring. "Hello, Sarah," he said cautiously. "Dad." Her voice was tight, professional, the same tone she used in the corporate law office where she'd built her career. "I got a strange call today from a man asking about you. Said he was from Sunrise Hills Canine Facility." Jack sat up straighter. "What did he want?" "He asked if I'd been in contact with you, whether you'd mentioned visiting their facility. He said they were concerned about your well-being after an emotional episode yesterday." Sarah paused. "Dad, what's going on? Are you chasing after Max again?" The dismissive way she said Max's name, like he was a figment of her father's obsession rather than a living being who had been part of their family, made Jack's jaw tighten. "I found him, Sarah. He's alive." The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably before Sarah sighed. "Dad, please. It's been 7 years. I can't watch you do this to yourself again." "This isn't like before," Jack insisted. "I saw him. I touched him. And there's something wrong happening at that facility. Max isn't the only dog they've taken." "Taken? Dad, the department reassigned him according to protocol. You've built this conspiracy in your head because you can't accept—" "This isn't in my head," Jack interrupted, his voice sharpening. "Sarah, listen to me. I need help with something, and I know you have resources I don't." Another weighty pause. "What kind of help?" Jack glanced at his computer screen. "I have files I need decrypted." Video files from Sunrise Hills. There's evidence of wrongdoing, but I can't access it. Evidence? Sarah's lawyer instincts perked up despite her skepticism. What kind of wrongdoing are we talking about? I'm not sure yet, but it involves Senator Hayes, corruption in the department, and whatever's happening to police dogs at that facility. The mention of Senator Hayes changed something in Sarah's voice. William Hayes. Dad, he's a client of our firm. A major client. Jack's heart sank. His daughter's law firm, Preston Whitfield, represented many of California's political elite. Of course, Hayes would be among their clients. All the more reason you might have access, Jack pressed. Sarah, I'm not asking you to compromise your ethics. Just help me see what's on these files. If it's nothing, I'll let this go. I promise. He could almost hear her weighing the professional risks against filial obligation. Finally, she said, I have a friend in our IT department. He's discreet. I can ask him to look at the files, but Dad, this is a one-time thing, and if there's nothing there, you need to get help. Real help. Thank you, Jack said, relief flooding through him. When can we meet? I have a dinner meeting tonight, but I could come by tomorrow morning before work, around 7? I'll make breakfast, Jack offered, a small olive branch. Don't bother, I'll bring coffee. Sarah's tone softened slightly. Take care of yourself, Dad. After hanging up, Jack turned his attention back to the computer. While he couldn't access the video files, there was one item on the drive he could open, a text document simply labeled Max Daily. It contained observation notes, clinical and detached. Subject M7 continues to demonstrate above-average olfactory discrimination. Successfully identified target documents among decoys in 910 trials. Response time improving. Note: subject shows signs of stress when presented with certain chemical compounds. See reference Doc R 429. Potential connection to previous field exposure? Jack read through pages of similar notes spanning several years, his unease growing. The clinical language couldn't disguise the reality. They were testing Max's exceptional abilities, pushing him through trials and experiments disguised as routine care. The most recent entries noted deteriorating cognitive function, increased anxiety, and the onset of seizures. A knock at the door interrupted his reading. Jack closed the document, pocketing the USB drive before answering. On his porch stood Robert Anderson, Jack's former chief, now retired like Jack, but considerably more prosperous. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, his golf tan evidence of a comfortable retirement. Been a while, Miller, Anderson said, offering his hand. Jack didn't take it. 7 years, give or take. What brings you here, Chief? Anderson's hand dropped awkwardly. Heard you paid a visit to Sunrise Hills yesterday. Caused quite a stir. News travels fast, Jack remarked coldly. Did Richard Mercer call you directly, or does he report to someone else first? A flicker of discomfort crossed Anderson's face. May I come in? This isn't a conversation for your front porch. Jack hesitated, then stepped aside. He led Anderson to the kitchen, deliberately not offering refreshments. They sat across from each other at the small table where Jack had eaten alone for years. I know you're angry, Jack, Anderson began. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. You took my partner away on false pretenses. You lied to my face about why. Anderson's expression remained neutral. What makes you think that? The West Side warehouse raid. What did Max find in those documents that scared you so badly you had to separate us? For a moment, Anderson's composed facade cracked, surprise flashing in his eyes before he regained control. You don't understand what you're getting into. Then explain it to me, Jack challenged. Tell me why my dog spent 7 years in a research facility instead of retiring with me. Tell me why Senator Hayes has a special interest in police dogs from high-profile cases. "You've been talking to someone at the facility," Anderson observed, his eyes narrowing. "That's a dangerous game, Jack. More dangerous than what happened to Officers Ramirez and Delaney. Both canine handlers, both transferred suddenly after their dogs made unusual discoveries. Both dead within 2 years. Ramirez from a training accident, Delaney from a supposed suicide." Jack leaned forward. "I've been doing my homework, Chief." Anderson glanced toward the door as if considering a quick exit. Instead, he sighed deeply. "I came here to warn you, Jack, as a courtesy for your years of service. Drop this. Max is dying. The facility has been transparent about his condition. Let him go peacefully and go on with your life. That's not going to happen." "Then you're forcing my hand." Anderson stood. "I can't protect you if you keep pushing." "Protect me?" Jack laughed bitterly. "Like you protected Max, or Ramirez and Delaney." Anderson moved toward the door, then paused. "The world isn't black and white, Jack. Sometimes we make compromises to prevent worse outcomes. Remember that." After Anderson left, Jack sat motionless at the kitchen table, processing the veiled threat. His former chief's visit confirmed what he'd begun to suspect. There was, indeed, a conspiracy, and it reached higher than he'd imagined. Jack reached for the phone, dialing Linda's number. It went straight to voicemail. He left a brief message. "Be careful. Anderson knows someone's talking. Call me when you can." That evening, Jack drove to his daughter's law firm, parking across the street to wait for her dinner meeting to end. He couldn't shake the feeling that things were accelerating, that waiting until morning might be too late. Sarah emerged from the building at 9:45 p.m., accompanied by a tall man in an expensive suit, Thomas Wright, her fiancé and fellow attorney at Preston Whitfield. Jack had met him only twice, finding him polished, ambitious, and utterly unlike the kind of man he'd hoped his daughter would choose. Jack was about to approach when another figure joined them, Richard Mercer, the man from Sunrise Hills. The three engaged in what appeared to be a serious conversation before Sarah shook Mercer's hand and departed with Thomas. Cold dread settled in Jack's stomach. The connection was too coincidental. If Sarah's firm represented Hayes, and Hayes was connected to Sunrise Hills, and now Mercer was meeting with Sarah. Jack started his car and followed his daughter's BMW at a careful distance. They drove to her upscale condominium in Westwood, where Jack parked and waited until the lights in her unit went on. Gathering his courage, he approached the building, buzzed her apartment, and waited. Sarah's voice came through the intercom, surprised. "Dad? What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you. Now." "It's important." A moment's hesitation. Then the door buzzed open. Jack made his way to the 3rd floor, where Sarah waited in her doorway, arms crossed defensively. "You said tomorrow morning," she began, but stopped when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" "I saw you with Richard Mercer outside your office," Jack said without preamble. "He's from Sunrise Hills. The man who tried to prevent me from seeing Max." Sarah's professional composure faltered. "How do you... Were you following me? Why were you meeting with him? And don't tell me it was coincidence." Thomas appeared behind Sarah, his hand possessively on her shoulder. "Is everything all right?" "My father seems to think I'm involved in some conspiracy regarding his former police dog," Sarah explained, her voice tight with embarrassment. Thomas's expression shifted from concern to condescension. "Mr. Miller, Sarah mentioned you've been struggling since retirement. We'd be happy to recommend someone who could help." "I don't need therapy," Jack snapped. "I need answers. Why is your firm involved with Sunrise Hills?" "That's confidential client information," Thomas replied smoothly. "But I can assure you everything at Sunrise Hills is completely above board. It's a state-of-the-art facility for retired service animals." "Is that what they told you to say?" Jack demanded. Or did you know all along what they were really doing there? Sarah stepped forward, her face flushed with anger and shame. Dad, stop it. This is exactly why I've kept my distance. You've turned into a paranoid old man who can't let go of a dog. The words struck like physical blows. Jack looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing familiar features. The little girl who had once ridden on his shoulders, who had played fetch with Max in the backyard, had been replaced by someone who viewed his pain as an inconvenience, his concerns as delusions. I have evidence, Jack said quietly, reaching for the USB drive in his pocket. I was hoping you'd help me review it, but now I see that was a mistake. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Dad, it's fine, Jack interrupted, turning to leave. I'll find someone else to help, someone who remembers what loyalty means. As he walked away, Thomas called after him, Mr. Miller, I really think you should reconsider getting professional help. These delusions aren't healthy. Jack kept walking, his heart heavy, but his resolve strengthened. He had trusted the wrong person. His own daughter was too entangled in the very system he was trying to expose, but the encounter had confirmed one thing. He was on the right track, and powerful people were getting nervous. In his car, Jack checked his phone. Still no call from Linda. A new worry gnawed at him. Had his actions put her in danger? He started the engine, making a decision. He couldn't wait for Sarah's help with the files. He needed to act now, while Max was still alive. It was time to take matters into his own hands. Dawn broke over Lakewood as Jack sat in his car across from the county courthouse, watching early morning workers file into the imposing brick building. He hadn't slept, instead spending the night making calls to old contacts, calling in favors accumulated over 3 decades of police work. Some doors had closed immediately at the mention of Max and Sunrise Hills. Others had opened just enough to confirm his suspicions. Something bigger than a retired police dog was at stake. Judge Martha Winters arrived at precisely 7:30 a.m., her silver hair visible as she exited her modest sedan. Jack had known Martha for 20 years. They'd worked countless cases together when she was still a prosecutor. More importantly, she had been a vocal advocate for the K-9 program, even adopting a retired bomb-sniffing Labrador herself. Jack approached as she retrieved her briefcase from the passenger seat. Little early for social calls, Jack, she observed without looking up, having recognized his halting gait. Especially from ghosts. Need your help, Martha, Jack said simply. She finally turned to face him, her keen eyes assessing. You look terrible. Feel worse, he admitted. Got a few minutes? Martha glanced at her watch. My first hearing isn't until 9. Coffee in my chambers? 15 minutes later, Jack sat across from Martha in her wood-paneled office, the USB drive on the desk between them. So you're telling me, Martha summarized after hearing his story, that Senator Hayes, the Lakewood PD, and this Sunrise Hills facility conspired to separate you from your K-9 partner because the dog found evidence of corruption, and they've been conducting experiments on him ever since? Not just Max. Other dogs too, all from handlers who were involved in sensitive cases. Martha leaned back, skepticism evident. That's a serious accusation against powerful people, Jack. And frankly, it sounds paranoid, Jack finished. Like the delusions of a lonely old man who can't let go. I've heard it before, believe me. I was going to say difficult to prove, Martha corrected gently. What exactly do you want from me? Jack tapped the USB drive. First, help accessing these files. Second, an emergency injunction allowing me to remove Max from that facility before they euthanize him. On what grounds? Illegal seizure of property, animal cruelty, emotional distress, I don't care. Whatever works. I just need time to gather more evidence and get Max somewhere safe. Martha picked up the drive, turning it thoughtfully in her fingers. Even if I could issue such an order, which is questionable given the jurisdictional issues, you'd be painting targets on both our backs. Hayes isn't someone to cross lightly. I know, Jack leaned forward, his voice dropping. But you didn't see Max, Martha. What they've done to him? He recognized me after 7 years. He's suffering and he doesn't have much time left. Something in Jack's intensity reached her. Martha sighed, inserting the USB drive into her computer. Let's see what we're dealing with. Her judicial credentials bypassed some of the encryption, revealing a series of video files organized by date. She opened the earliest one, dated shortly after Max had been taken from Jack. The footage showed a sterile room with a series of tables. Max, noticeably younger and healthier, was led in by a handler. Various objects were placed before him, some papers, clothing items, and sealed containers. A voice off-camera instructed the handler to command Max to search. What followed was both impressive and disturbing. Max methodically examined each item, ultimately alerting on 2 papers and 1 container. The voice praised him, and Max received a brief play reward with a tennis ball. Standard detection work, Jack commented. Nothing unusual there. Martha opened a file from 6 months later. The setup was similar, but now Max was presented with different papers. When he alerted on one specific document, the handler immediately removed it and presented a different set. Max appeared confused, looking toward the removed document. The handler issued a correction, forcing Max to alert on a different paper. They're training him to ignore certain triggers, Jack realized, anger building, conditioning him to overlook specific evidence. The next video, dated a year later, showed a visibly stressed Max being presented with a series of photographs of people. When he alerted on one particular image, a face Jack recognized as a city councilman later implicated in a corruption scandal, Max received no reward. Instead, the handler issued a harsh correction. The process repeated until Max bypassed that photo entirely. Martha's professional composure cracked as she watched. They're deliberately training police dogs to miss evidence connected to certain individuals. That's tampering with law enforcement tools. It could invalidate hundreds of cases. Exactly, Jack said grimly. And Max was the test case. His abilities were exceptional. If they could recondition him, they could apply the same techniques to the entire K9 program. They watched more videos spanning years, documenting the systematic reprogramming of Max's trained responses. The most recent files, dated just months earlier, showed an aging Max, his movements slower, sometimes confused. The tests had become simpler, but the pattern remained, selective reinforcement to create blind spots in his detection abilities. Martha sat back, visibly disturbed. This is bigger than your dog, Jack. This is systemic corruption of evidence collection. I know, but Max is my priority, Jack admitted. Get him out first, then we can address the bigger picture. Martha considered for a long moment before turning to her computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she drafted a document. I'm issuing an emergency temporary restraining order preventing Sunrise Hills from euthanizing or relocating the animal known as Max, ID number K9357, pending a full hearing. It's thin legally, but it will buy you 72 hours. Relief flooded through Jack. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This only works if you serve it properly. And, Jack, she fixed him with a stern gaze. This has to be by the book. No vigilante justice. You serve the papers, you wait for the hearing, you present your evidence. Understood? Jack nodded, though they both recognized the promise for what it was, conditional at best. As Martha printed the order, her phone rang. She answered, listening briefly before her expression darkened. When? She asked. Then, I understand. Keep me informed. She hung up, turning to Jack with grave concern. There was a break-in at Sunrise Hills last night. A staff member was assaulted, and one of the dogs is missing. Jack's heart raced. Max? Martha shook her head. They didn't say which dog, but Jack, if this is connected to your inquiries— It wasn't me, Jack insisted. I've been gathering information, not planning a heist. Regardless, this complicates things. Security will be heightened. She handed him the court order. Be careful how you proceed. Jack pocketed the document, his mind racing. I need to warn Linda. She may be in danger. Outside the courthouse, Jack tried Linda's number again. Still no answer. His instincts screaming, he drove directly to Sunrise Hills, arriving to find the facility surrounded by police cars and a local news van. Keeping his distance, he watched as officers interviewed staff members. There was no sign of Linda, but Richard Mercer was visible, gesturing emphatically to a detective. Jack recognized the detective, Michael Torres, a former colleague who had once worked with Jack on the narcotics task force. Jack's phone rang. Unknown number. Miller? He answered cautiously. Jack, it's Linda. Her voice was hushed, urgent. Don't come to the facility. They're looking for you. Are you all right? I heard about the break-in. It wasn't a break-in, it was staged. They discovered I copied files and accessed restricted areas. Jack, they took Max last night. Cold fear gripped him. Took him where? I don't know. Richard ordered an emergency transfer after you left yesterday. When I questioned it, they accused me of corporate espionage and fired me. The alleged assault was fabricated to justify a police presence. Where are you now? Somewhere safe. But they're monitoring my known locations. We need to meet somewhere public. Jack thought quickly. The Vietnam Memorial in Centennial Park. 1 hour. I'll be there. And Jack, bring the court order. We're going to need it. Jack hung up, observing the scene at Sunrise Hills a moment longer. Torres was now examining the security cameras near the entrance. Jack knew it was only a matter of time before they reviewed yesterday's footage and identified him as a recent visitor. At Centennial Park, Jack sat on a bench facing the memorial wall, names of fallen soldiers etched in solemn rows. He'd come here often after returning from Vietnam, finding solace in the quiet dignity of the place. Now it offered different protection. Open sight lines in all directions, multiple exits, and enough visitors to discourage confrontation. Linda arrived wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, scanning the area carefully before approaching. She sat beside Jack, maintaining a casual posture while speaking urgently. They've moved Max and 3 other dogs to a secondary facility. I overheard Richard on the phone with Senator Hayes after you left. He said the assets needed to be secured before the Miller situation escalated. Did you hear where they took them? Linda nodded. A private veterinary research center in Malibu. Hayes owns the property through a shell corporation. It's where they conduct the more intensive phases of their program. What exactly are they researching? Jack asked, dreading the answer. It started as a legitimate study on improving canine detection capabilities, but Hayes and his associates realized they could use the same techniques to manipulate evidence collection, training dogs to ignore certain scents, certain people. Linda's voice trembled with anger. They're creating blind spots in investigations, Jack, protecting specific targets while maintaining the illusion of thorough police work. And the dogs who couldn't be reprogrammed? Linda looked away. They didn't survive the training. Max was exceptional. He resisted longer than most, maintained his original imprinting to you despite everything. That's why they kept him so long. Jack absorbed this, his worst fears confirmed. I have a court order preventing them from euthanizing Max, but it's useless if we can't find him. I can get you to the Malibu facility, Linda offered. I created a backup access card before they fired me, but we'd be trespassing, possibly breaking multiple laws. At this point, I don't care, Jack said firmly. Max is dying. Every day matters now. Linda studied him, seeming to reach a decision. There's something else you should know. Your daughter's fiancé, Thomas Wright. He's directly involved. His law firm doesn't just represent Hayes, they helped structure the entire program, creating the legal framework to classify the dogs as research assets, exempt from normal service animal protocols. The betrayal cut deep, but Jack wasn't entirely surprised. Sarah mentioned Hayes was a client. I doubt she knows the full extent of it. Maybe not, Linda conceded. But Thomas definitely does. He's been to the facility multiple times, reviewing protocols and signing off on transfers. A new voice interrupted their conversation. Planning a jailbreak, Jack? They turned to find Detective Torres standing a few feet away, hands casually in his pockets but posture alert. Michael, Jack acknowledged cautiously. Been a while. Not long enough, apparently. Torres glanced at Linda. Ms. Carson, I believe, Sunrise Hills is very interested in speaking with you about some missing property. Detective Torres? Linda replied coolly. I'm surprised you found time for petty theft cases, given your homicide caseload. Torres smiled without humor. When Senator Hayes calls the chief directly, priorities shift. He turned back to Jack. You've stirred up a hornet's nest, old man. People way above my pay grade are asking questions about your sudden interest in Sunrise Hills. Jack matched Torres's casual tone. Just visiting an old friend? Nothing illegal about that. Maybe not. But removing an animal valued at over $50,000? That's grand theft. We didn't take any dog, Linda objected. Evidence suggests otherwise. Torres shrugged. Security footage shows you accessing restricted areas last night, Ms. Carson. And your key card was used to enter the medical wing where a valuable German shepherd subsequently disappeared. That's impossible, Linda insisted. I was home all night. Tell it to the judge. Torres reached for his handcuffs. Linda Carson, you're under arrest for grand theft and corporate espionage. Jack Miller, you're wanted for questioning regarding the same incident. Jack stood, placing himself between Torres and Linda. You know this is wrong, Michael. You've worked with K9s. You know what they mean to their handlers. Something flickered in Torres's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or old loyalty. Step aside, Jack. This isn't personal. The hell it isn't. They took Max because he found evidence in the West Side warehouse case, evidence that implicated Hayes and others. They've been conditioning police dogs to ignore certain evidence, certain people. It compromises everything the department stands for. Torres hesitated, his hand still on his cuffs. That's a serious accusation. I have proof. Jack gestured to his pocket where the USB drive rested. Video documentation of the entire program. Dogs being trained to selectively alert, to create blind spots in investigations. The detective's professional curiosity was piqued, despite himself. Let me see. Jack slowly retrieved the drive, offering it to Torres. Everything's there. Multiple dogs, multiple cases, all leading back to Hayes and his associates. Torres examined the drive, internal conflict visible on his face. Finally, he pocketed it and stepped back. I need to review this before proceeding. You two stay available. If this checks out, we'll talk again. If not... He left the threat hanging. After Torres departed, Linda exhaled shakily. Do you trust him? Not entirely, Jack admitted. But he's a good cop at heart. And he loves dogs, has 2 retired K9s himself. If anyone in the department will take this seriously, it's him. That was our only copy of the evidence, Linda pointed out. Not quite. Jack patted his jacket pocket. I made a duplicate this morning. And sent another to Martha Winters for safekeeping. Linda nodded, impressed by his foresight. So what now? Jack checked his watch. We have maybe 24 hours before they realize Torres isn't bringing us in. We need to use that time to locate Max and the other dogs. The Malibu facility is secured better than most banks, Linda warned. We'd need more than just my access card to get inside. Then we'll need help, Jack said, an idea forming. And I know just who to ask. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched before them, its curves hugging the coastline as Jack drove north toward Malibu. Beside him, Linda studied a satellite map of their destination on her phone, while in the back seat sat a man Jack hadn't spoken to in over 15 years, Samuel "Sam" Wilson, formerly the department's top K-9 trainer before a scandal involving excessive force allegations had ended his career. So this place, Sam gestured toward the horizon where the sun was beginning its descent into the Pacific, it's using my training methods to teach dogs to selectively ignore evidence? Not just using them, Linda clarified without looking up from her phone. Perverting them. Taking the bond-based training you pioneered and weaponizing it against the very system it was designed to protect. Sam's weathered face darkened. That explains why they wanted my record so badly when they pushed me out. Jack caught Sam's eye in the rearview mirror. Thanks for coming. I know it's a risk. My reputation's already shot to hell, Sam shrugged, the casualness of the gesture belied by the tension in his voice. Besides, what they're doing to these dogs, it's an abomination. Dogs live to please their handlers. Manipulating that instinct to corrupt evidence? It's worse than animal cruelty. It's a perversion of everything these animals stand for. They turned off the highway onto a narrow road that wound up into the Malibu hills, the ocean view gradually obscured by dense foliage and security fencing. Half a mile from their destination, Jack pulled into a scenic overlook and cut the engine. "We go on foot from here," he announced, retrieving a small duffel bag from the trunk. Inside were 3 flashlights, gloves, wire cutters, and a handheld police scanner that had seen better days. "Your daughter's fiancé is really involved in this?" Sam asked as they gathered their equipment. "Seems personal." "It is," Jack admitted grimly. "But right now my only concern is getting to Max before they move him again. Linda, you're sure this is where they took him?" Linda nodded, showing them her phone screen, a facility blueprint she'd accessed using her emergency credentials before they'd been revoked. The veterinary center occupies the main building. Behind it is a smaller structure designated for behavioral conditioning. That's where they'll have Max and the other dogs. "Security?" Sam asked. 2 guards at the main gate, electronic access only. Perimeter cameras on standard rotation patterns. Inside, the conditioning facility has its own security system, keycard access with biometric confirmation for the inner rooms. Jack frowned. "Your access card won't get us through biometrics." "No," Linda agreed, "but I know someone who can help with that too." "She'll meet us near the southeast corner of the property." Dusk had settled by the time they reached the designated meeting point, where the security fence met a steep, natural slope, creating a blind spot in the camera coverage. Waiting in the shadows was a young woman with close-cropped hair and the focused intensity of someone accustomed to high-pressure situations. "This is Dr. May Chen," Linda introduced her. "She worked in the research division until 3 months ago when she resigned in protest." "Resigned is a generous term," May said dryly. "I raised ethical concerns about the conditioning program. 2 days later, I was escorted out by security." She assessed Jack with clinical precision. "You're the handler they separated from Subject M7? "His name is Max," Jack corrected, bristling at the clinical designation. "And yes, I'm his partner." May nodded, accepting the correction. "The work they're doing here violates every ethical standard in animal research." When Linda contacted me, I couldn't refuse to help. She held up a security badge. "My biometrics are still in the system. They're efficient about collecting data, but surprisingly lax about removing access once someone leaves." Sam examined the perimeter fence. "We should move now, while we still have some daylight." Using the wire cutters, they created an opening just large enough to squeeze through one at a time. May led them along a maintenance path that skirted the main building's security cameras, bringing them to the rear of the complex where the behavioral conditioning facility stood. A low, windowless structure that resembled a bunker more than a research center. "The dogs are kept in the central section," May explained in hushed tones. "4 kennels monitored constantly. The observation room is usually staffed until 9 p.m., but the night supervisor only checks every 2 hours after that." Jack checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. "So we have a narrow window once the day staff leaves." "Exactly. We need to access the security room first, loop the kennel cameras, then retrieve the dogs." May held up her badge. "I can get us in, but once we're inside, we'll have approximately 20 minutes before the system flags the irregular access pattern." Linda looked worried. "That's barely enough time to locate Max, let alone get all 4 dogs out safely." "Then we work efficiently," Jack said firmly. "Sam, you and Linda secure our exit route. May and I will retrieve the dogs. We meet back here in 30 minutes, no matter what." The security door accepted May's badge with a soft beep, the reinforced door sliding open to reveal a sterile hallway bathed in fluorescent light. They moved swiftly to the security office where May's expertise quickly looped the kennel cameras into a 15-minute cycle of empty hallways. "System override complete," she whispered. "Now for the kennels." The central section required another biometric scan, which May passed with visible tension. Inside, the temperature dropped noticeably, the air conditioning kept at uncomfortably low levels to reduce stress behaviors, as May explained with evident disgust. 4 kennels lined the far wall, each containing a single dog, 3 German Shepherds and 1 Belgian Malinois, all showing signs of age and medical intervention. Shaved patches for IVs, monitoring devices attached to collars, subdued demeanors that spoke of either sedation or broken spirits. Jack's eyes immediately found Max in the 3rd kennel. The dog lay curled in the corner, thinner than Jack remembered from his brief reunion at Sunrise Hills, his breathing shallow and labored. A medical chart hung outside the kennel door, detailing seizure medications and cognitive decline protocols. "Max," Jack called softly, approaching the kennel. The dog's ears twitched, his head rising slowly as if the movement required immense effort. Recognition dawned gradually in those clouded eyes, followed by a feeble attempt to rise. "Careful," May cautioned, as Jack unlatched the kennel door. "He's heavily medicated. They've been increasing his dosage to manage the seizures." Jack knelt beside Max, gently running his hands over the familiar form, cataloging each new sign of suffering. The prominent ribs, the tumor visible as a swelling near the base of his skull, the tremor in his hind legs. "I'm here now, buddy," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm taking you home." Max pressed his head against Jack's chest, a gesture so achingly familiar it transported Jack back through the years to countless quiet moments of connection amid the chaos of their working life. Despite everything, the separation, the abuse disguised as research, the advancing illness, Max still recognized him, still trusted him. "We need to move," May urged, already examining the other dogs. "These 2 can walk, but this one," she indicated the Malinois, "needs to be carried. The tumor is pressing on his spine." Jack hesitated, torn between focusing solely on Max and acknowledging the suffering of the other animals. Sam's voice came back to him. An abomination. He couldn't leave them behind. "We take them all," he decided. "Sam and Linda can help once we reach the exit." May nodded, relief visible on her face as she began disconnecting monitoring devices from the dogs' collars. The sedatives should wear off in a few hours. Until then, they'll be disoriented but manageable. They were guiding the dogs toward the exit when a security alarm suddenly blared, red lights pulsing along the hallway. "Someone's accessing the main entrance," May said, checking the security panel. "We need to go now!" Jack urged Max forward, the dog stumbling but determined to follow his partner. The other shepherds followed Max's lead while May supported the struggling Malinois. They made it to the rear exit where Sam and Linda waited, eyes wide with alarm at the sound of the security system. "What happened?" Linda demanded. "No time," Jack replied, transferring one of the shepherds to Sam's care. "We need to get to the vehicles." They had just reached the perimeter fence when floodlights illuminated the area, voices shouting commands as security personnel emerged from the main building. "Go!" Jack urged the others. "Take the dogs to the secondary location we discussed. I'll create a diversion." "Jack, no!" Linda began, but Sam cut her off. "He's right. These dogs are evidence. We need to get them to safety." He took Linda's arm, guiding her and two of the dogs through the fence opening while May followed with the Malinois. Jack knelt beside Max, cupping the dog's face gently between his hands. "I need you to go with them, buddy." "I'll be right behind you." Max whined, pressing against Jack's legs in refusal. "Please, Max, just one more time. I need you to trust me." Jack looked into those faithful eyes, seeing not the old, sick dog of the present, but the vibrant partner who had never once let him down. "Find Linda. Go." With painful reluctance, Max limped toward the fence opening, looking back repeatedly as Jack moved in the opposite direction, deliberately making noise to draw the guards' attention. It worked. The security team converged on Jack's position, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness as he led them away from his escaping companions. He managed to evade them for several minutes, using the terrain and vegetation as cover, before a misstep on the uneven ground sent him stumbling. Two guards tackled him immediately, driving him to the ground with more force than necessary. Jack didn't resist, knowing he'd accomplished his goal, buying time for the others to escape with the dogs. "Identification," one guard demanded, roughly searching Jack's pockets. "My wallet's in my back pocket," Jack replied, wincing as his arthritic shoulder protested the awkward position. The guard retrieved Jack's ID, examining it under his flashlight. "Jack Miller," he read aloud, recognition dawning. "Call Mr. Mercer," he instructed his partner. "Tell him we've got the former handler." Within minutes, Jack was escorted into the main building where Richard Mercer waited in a sparsely furnished office, his expression a mixture of anger and smug satisfaction. "Mr. Miller, trespassing seems rather beneath a decorated officer such as yourself. Kidnapping and animal abuse seem beneath a so-called research facility," Jack countered, standing as straight as his aging frame would allow. "Where's Senator Hayes? I'm sure he'd love to explain to a judge why he's corrupting police evidence through dog conditioning." Mercer's smugness faltered momentarily. "I don't know what conspiracy theory you've concocted, but breaking into private property won't help your case." "I'm not the one who needs help," Jack said. "The evidence is already secure. The videos, the training logs, the testimony from former employees. It's over, Mercer." "Evidence of what exactly? A state-of-the-art facility providing specialized care for retired service animals? Groundbreaking research to improve K9 performance?" Mercer gestured dismissively. "You've clearly been misled by disgruntled ex-employees with personal vendettas." "I saw the conditioning sessions," Jack pressed. "Dogs being trained to ignore specific evidence to create blind spots in investigations. That's tampering with law enforcement tools. A federal offense." Mercer's phone rang, interrupting their confrontation. He answered, listening intently before his face darkened with fury. "Find them," he snapped into the phone. "Check all vehicles leaving the area." He turned to Jack, mask of professionalism slipping. "Where are they taking the dogs?" "What dogs?" Jack replied innocently. "I came alone." Mercer slammed his palm on the desk. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Those animals are part of a critical research program funded by the Department of Justice. This isn't about your personal attachment to a dying dog. It's about national security." Is that the justification Hayes used? Jack asked. Calling corruption national security to avoid oversight? Before Mercer could respond, the office door opened to admit a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, impeccably dressed despite the late hour. Senator William Hayes carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to deference, but the tight lines around his mouth betrayed his anger. "Mr. Miller," Hayes acknowledged coolly, "I understand you've been causing quite a disturbance in my facility." "Your facility," Jack repeated. Interesting that a sitting senator owns a private research center conducting experiments on police dogs. I wonder what the ethics committee would make of that conflict of interest." Hayes dismissed the security guards with a gesture, waiting until the door closed before responding. "I've reviewed your service record, Mr. Miller. Exemplary career, distinguished medals, respect from your peers. Why throw it all away over a dog that, frankly, would have been euthanized years ago if not for our intervention?" "Don't pretend you kept Max alive out of compassion," Jack retorted. "You needed him for your program, using his exceptional abilities to perfect your evidence manipulation techniques." Hayes studied Jack thoughtfully. "You misunderstand the nature of our work here. We're enhancing K9 capabilities, focusing their detection skills on high-priority targets while minimizing false positives. It's made the program more efficient, more precise. More corrupt," Jack corrected. "You're creating deliberate blind spots to protect certain people, yourself included, I'm guessing. Those documents Max found at the West Side warehouse, they implicated you, didn't they?" A flicker of surprise crossed Hayes's features before he composed himself. "Ancient history, and irrelevant to your current situation, which is quite precarious." He leaned forward. "Breaking and entering, theft of valuable research animals, conspiracy to obstruct a federal program, these are serious charges, Mr. Miller, charges that could result in substantial prison time, even for someone of your advanced age." "Threaten me all you want," Jack said steadily. "The evidence is already being reviewed by people outside your sphere of influence. Judge Martha Winters has copies of everything, as does Detective Michael Torres. By morning the FBI will too." Hayes's confident demeanor wavered momentarily. "Winters," he muttered, seemingly more to himself than to Jack. He straightened, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "Mr. Mercer, please escort Mr. Miller to the secure conference room. I need to make some calls." As Mercer led Jack down the hallway, the senator's voice followed them. "And find those dogs. Immediately." The secure conference room proved to be little more than a glorified holding cell, windowless, with a heavy door that locked from the outside. Jack sank into one of the chairs surrounding the polished conference table, his body finally registering the toll of the evening's exertions. His shoulder throbbed where the guards had wrenched his arm, and his chronically arthritic knee protested each movement. Yet despite the physical discomfort and his precarious situation, Jack felt an unfamiliar sensation spreading through him: hope. For the first time in 7 years, he knew exactly where Max was and who was caring for him. The dog was free from this facility, reunited with people who valued him as more than a research subject. Whatever happened next, Jack had accomplished his primary mission. He closed his eyes, picturing Max safe with Linda and the others, the heavy medications gradually wearing off, perhaps even now remembering what it felt like to be treated with kindness rather than clinical detachment. The image brought a peace Jack hadn't experienced since the day they'd taken his partner away. His thoughts were interrupted by the conference room door opening to admit Thomas Wright, Sarah's fiancé, looking considerably less polished than during their previous encounter. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, as if he'd dressed in haste. "Mr. Miller," Thomas began awkwardly, "this is an unfortunate situation." "Is it?" Jack replied coolly. "Seems like everything's proceeding exactly as it should." "The truth coming to light, justice finally catching up," Thomas closed the door, lowering his voice. "You don't understand the complexity of what's happening here. Senator Hayes is protecting vital national interests. By corrupting police evidence? By abusing service animals? Those are the national interests you're defending?" "The K-9 program needed refinement," Thomas insisted. "Too many false positives. Too many investigations derailed by overzealous dogs alerting on insignificant traces. Hayes implemented protocols to focus the animals' training on high-priority targets." "And coincidentally," Jack observed, "those protocols ensured that certain influential people remained insulated from investigation. People like Hayes and his associates." Thomas ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's more nuanced than that." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like what it is, corruption disguised as progress." Jack leaned forward. "Does Sarah know what you're involved in? Does she know her fiancé is helping cover up criminal activity?" Thomas flinched at the mention of Sarah. "Leave her out of this. She has nothing to do with the program." "She's already involved," Jack countered. "Her firm represents Hayes, she's engaged to you, and her father is currently being detained for exposing the truth. I'd say she's neck-deep in this, whether she knows it or not." A knock at the door prevented Thomas from responding. A security guard entered, speaking quietly to Thomas before departing. "They've located your accomplices," Thomas announced, regaining some composure. "Local police have established roadblocks on all routes leaving Malibu. It's only a matter of time." Jack maintained a neutral expression, though concern bloomed inside him. He'd hoped the others would have more time to reach safety with the dogs. "Senator Hayes is prepared to be reasonable," Thomas continued. "If you cooperate in recovering the animals, particularly the German Shepherd designated M7, he's willing to consider leniency." "Leniency," Jack repeated skeptically. "And what exactly does that entail?" "No criminal charges, a generous stipend for your retirement, even permission to visit M7 under supervised conditions for whatever time he has left." Thomas spread his hands. "It's a fair offer given the circumstances." Jack studied the younger man, seeing beyond the rehearsed speech to the desperation underneath. "Hayes is worried," he realized aloud. "The evidence is damning enough that he's willing to negotiate." Thomas's expression confirmed Jack's assessment. "The senator prefers to resolve this quietly. The program has done considerable good, despite your objections to certain methodologies." "The answer is no," Jack said firmly. "Max deserves better than supervised visits in a research facility. He deserves to come home for whatever time he has left." "You're not being realistic," Thomas protested. "M7, Max is dying. The tumor is inoperable. Even if you somehow avoided prosecution and secured custody, the medical costs alone would be astronomical." "Some things are worth any cost," Jack replied simply. Thomas stared at him, genuine bewilderment on his face. All this, breaking into a secure facility, risking prison, antagonizing powerful people, for a dog that's already at the end of its life. "I don't understand." "No," Jack agreed sadly. "You don't. And that's why Sarah deserves better than you." The words struck home, anger flashing across Thomas's features. "You don't get to judge my relationship with your daughter. You barely know her anymore, too busy chasing ghosts and nursing grievances to be part of her life." Before Jack could respond, the door opened again. Senator Hayes entered, followed by a figure Jack hadn't expected to see. His daughter, Sarah. "Why is my father handcuffed? And what exactly is this facility? It looks nothing like the state-of-the-art rehabilitation center you described in your firm's promotional materials." Hayes sighed theatrically. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately, Ms. Miller." Family dynamics can complicate professional matters. "We're not going anywhere," Sarah stated firmly, squaring her shoulders. "I want answers, and I want these handcuffs removed from my father immediately." Something in her tone, a steel Jack hadn't heard from his daughter in years, seemed to surprise Hayes, who reassessed her with newfound caution. "Your father broke into a secure research facility and facilitated the theft of valuable service animals," Hayes explained, maintaining his reasonable facade. "The handcuffs are merely a precaution while we resolve the situation." Sarah turned to Jack. "Is this about Max? After all this time?" "It's about much more than that now," Jack replied steadily. "Max was just the beginning. They've been conditioning police dogs to selectively ignore evidence, Sarah, creating deliberate blind spots in investigations to protect certain people, like the senator here and his associates." "That's absurd," Thomas interjected. "Senator Hayes has been improving the K-9 program's efficiency, focusing their detection capabilities on priority targets." "Is that the line they fed you?" Jack asked his daughter. "Because I've seen the training videos. I've watched them systematically reprogram these dogs to bypass specific evidence, specific people. It's corruption, plain and simple." Sarah's legal mind was clearly processing the implications. If that's true, it would invalidate hundreds of cases. It would be tampering with law enforcement tools. "Precisely," Jack confirmed. "And Max was their unwilling test subject because his abilities were exceptional. When he found those documents in the West Side warehouse case, financial records linking Hayes to offshore accounts, they realized they had a problem. A dog that good could expose them, so they separated us and used him to perfect their techniques." Hayes maintained his composure, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Miller. Allegations you cannot substantiate." "The evidence is already being reviewed by Judge Martha Winters and Detective Michael Torres," Jack countered. "And the dogs we rescued tonight are living proof of your program." "Rescued?" Sarah echoed, looking between the men with growing horror. "Dad, what have you done?" "What no one else would," Jack said simply. "I found Max, Sarah. He's dying. Brain tumor. They were using him until the very end, and when he was no longer useful, they planned to euthanize him. I couldn't let that happen." Sarah turned to Thomas, her expression hardening. "Did you know about this? About what they were doing to these dogs?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "The research program operates within legal parameters. Yes, some of the methods are unconventional, but—" "That's not what I asked," Sarah cut him off. "Did you know they took a dying dog from my father and used him for experiments?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Sarah stepped away from Thomas as if his mere proximity had become intolerable. "Miss Miller," Hayes intervened, his voice taking on a patronizing tone, "I understand this is upsetting, but your father's actions tonight have serious legal implications. We're willing to be lenient given his age and distinguished service record, but we need his cooperation in recovering the missing animals." "Missing animals that you experimented on and planned to euthanize," Sarah clarified, her professional detachment returning as she processed the situation. "Animals that were separated from their handlers against standard protocol and subjected to questionable research practices." "The research is fully authorized," Hayes insisted. "These are police assets, not pets." "Max is not an asset," Jack interjected quietly. "He's my partner. He saved my life more times than I can count. He deserves to come home." Sarah looked at her father, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years. She saw beyond the stubborn old man she'd dismissed as obsessive, beyond the grieving widower who'd retreated from family connections. She saw the fierce loyalty that had defined his career, the unwavering commitment to what he believed was right. "I want to see the evidence," she said finally, her decision made. "The videos, the documentation, everything," Hayes scoffed. "That's highly classified research material." "Not if it documents illegal activity," Sarah countered. And as an officer of the court, if I become aware of federal crimes being committed, I have an ethical obligation to report them. Your firm represents Senator Hayes, Thomas reminded her, a hint of desperation in his voice. Confidentiality agreements, professional obligations. Don't lecture me on legal ethics, Sarah snapped. Not when you've been facilitating what appears to be systematic corruption of police evidence. The tension in the room was palpable as Hayes studied Sarah, recalculating his approach. After a moment, he nodded to a guard. Remove Mr. Miller's handcuffs. Perhaps we can discuss this situation more productively without unnecessary restraints. As the cuffs came off, Jack rubbed his wrists, the relief in his aged joints evident. Sarah moved to his side, a protective gesture that surprised him after years of distance. Now, she addressed Hayes directly, I want to see the facility. All of it. That won't be possible at this hour, Hayes demurred. Security protocols can be overridden by the facility's owner, Sarah completed for him, which, according to public records I accessed on the drive here, is you, Senator, through a shell corporation called Malibu Research Holdings. Hayes's mask of reasonableness slipped momentarily, revealing the calculating politician beneath. You've done your homework, Ms. Miller. When Thomas mentioned an emergency meeting with you at an undisclosed location, I became curious. Attorneys don't typically meet clients at unmarked facilities in the middle of the night. She glanced at her fiancé, though apparently some ethical boundaries are more flexible than others. Thomas flinched at the barb, but remained silent. Hayes considered his options before apparently reaching a decision. Very well. A limited tour might help clarify some misunderstandings. But I must insist that any discussion of what you observe remains confidential pending proper legal channels. We'll see, Sarah replied noncommittally, helping Jack to his feet. As they exited the conference room, Jack leaned close to his daughter's ear. Linda Carson and the others. They have Max and 3 other dogs. If the police have set up roadblocks, leave that to me, Sarah murmured back, already reaching for her phone. Hayes led them through the main research building, offering a sanitized narrative of the facility's purpose, enhancing canine capabilities, improving detection accuracy, advancing the science of working dog training. The laboratories they passed were pristine and professional, showing none of the more questionable aspects of the program. And the behavioral conditioning wing, Sarah prompted, when Hayes seemed inclined to conclude the tour without visiting that section. Unfortunately, there was a security incident earlier this evening, Hayes replied smoothly. That area is currently being processed by our security team. You mean where my father allegedly rescued several dogs? Sarah clarified. I'd like to see it. Hayes hesitated, then nodded curtly. As you wish. The behavioral conditioning wing presented a stark contrast to the main facility. Where the research laboratories had been open and well lit, this area was compartmentalized, windowless, with an institutional sterility that felt oppressive. The kennels stood empty, their recent occupants' absence conspicuous. Sarah examined one of the kennels, noting the monitoring equipment and medical charts still attached to the door. Her expression darkened as she read the treatment protocols. Cognitive recalibration sessions, she read aloud. Negative reinforcement for target-specific alerts. Medication protocols to enhance compliance. She looked up at Hayes. This doesn't sound like rehabilitation or enhanced training. It sounds like systematic reprogramming. Advanced behavioral modification, Hayes corrected. The techniques are sophisticated, but humane. Is that why Subject K4, a Belgian Malinois with 8 years of distinguished service, developed spinal tumors after 2 years in your program? Sarah challenged, referencing the medical chart. Or why Subject M7, my father's dog Max, is suffering from seizures and a brain tumor? Correlation is not causation, Hayes replied dismissively. These are aging animals with natural health decline. Jack, who had been quietly observing the empty kennel that had housed Max, spoke up. The tumor rates in this program are 3 times higher than the general K9 population. That's not correlation, it's a pattern. You can't possibly know that, Thomas objected. But I do, came a new voice from the doorway. They turned to find Dr. Mei Chen standing there, her access badge visible around her neck. Behind her stood Detective Michael Torres, his expression grim as he surveyed the facility. Dr. Chen, Hayes acknowledged coldly. I was informed you'd resigned your position. I did, May confirmed, after documenting the concerning health patterns among your research subjects. Patterns I reported to the American Veterinary Association and the Department of Justice's Office of Inspector General. Torres stepped forward, his badge now visible. Senator Hayes, we have a warrant to search these premises and seize all records relating to the K9 Behavioral Modification Program. Hayes's composure finally cracked, anger flashing in his eyes. This is outrageous. You have no jurisdiction here. This is a private research facility operating under federal authorization. The warrant covers that, Torres replied calmly, handing Hayes the document. Signed by Judge Martha Winters an hour ago after reviewing evidence of potential criminal activity including tampering with law enforcement assets, animal cruelty, and obstruction of justice. Sarah turned to Jack, genuine amazement in her expression. You planned this? Jack shook his head. I just set the wheels in motion. Torres and Judge Winters did the rest. He looked to the detective. The dogs? Safe, Torres confirmed. Miss Carson and Mr. Wilson have them at the veterinary hospital specified in the warrant. Dr. Abrams is examining them now. Relief washed over Jack, his shoulders sagging as the tension of the past several hours, the past several years, began to release. Max? Stable for now, Torres said gently. The seizure medications are being adjusted. Dr. Abrams says you can see him as soon as we're done here. Hayes was reading the warrant, his political mind already calculating damage control strategies. This won't stand, he insisted. The program has federal oversight. I have contacts at the highest levels. Not anymore, Torres interrupted, nodding to officers now entering the facility. Your contacts are distancing themselves as we speak. The videos Mr. Miller provided were quite compelling, especially when paired with Dr. Chen's documentation. No one wants to be associated with corrupting police evidence or animal cruelty. Bad optics. As officers began securing the facility and collecting evidence, Sarah pulled Jack aside, her expression troubled. I had no idea, Dad, about any of this. About Max. About what Thomas was involved in. I should have listened to you. Jack shook his head. You couldn't have known. They built this system specifically to be opaque, to hide behind legal frameworks and security classifications. But I dismissed you, Sarah insisted, regret evident in her voice. I thought you were just stuck in the past, unable to let go of a dog. Max was never just a dog, Jack said quietly. But I understand why it seemed that way to you. I wasn't good at explaining what he meant to me, especially after your mother died. It was easier to retreat into the search than to face everything else I was losing. Sarah's eyes welled with tears. I've missed you, Dad. Even when I was angry at you, I missed who you used to be. I'm still here, Jack assured her, tentatively reaching for her hand. A bit more battered, a lot more stubborn, but still here. Their moment was interrupted by Thomas, who approached with calculated contrition. Sarah, I need to explain. Not now, she cut him off, her voice hard. Maybe not ever. You don't understand my position, Thomas persisted. The firm's relationship with Senator Hayes is complex. I was obligated to protect client confidentiality. Even when that confidentiality covered up illegal activity, Sarah challenged. Even when it involved deliberate cruelty to an animal that meant everything to my father? Thomas had no adequate response. Sarah removed her engagement ring, placing it in his palm with quiet finality. "I'll be contacting the ethics committee at the firm tomorrow. They should know exactly what kind of legal work you've been facilitating." As Thomas stood speechless, Sarah turned back to Jack. "Let's go see Max." The drive to the veterinary hospital was quiet, Sarah handling the wheel while Jack processed the whirlwind of events. Dawn was breaking over the Pacific as they arrived, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. A new day in more ways than one. Inside, they found Linda Carson dozing in a waiting room chair while Sam Wilson paced restlessly. Both looked up as Jack and Sarah entered, relief evident on their tired faces. "They're all stable," Linda reported immediately. "The Belgian Malinois needs surgery for his spinal compression, but Dr. Abrams is optimistic. The other two shepherds are responding well to proper care." "And Max?" Jack asked, his voice barely steady. Sam gestured toward a hallway. "Room 3. Dr. Abrams said you can go in whenever you're ready. He's awake but weak." Jack moved toward the indicated hallway, then paused, turning back to Linda and Sam. "Thank you, both of you. I can never repay what you've risked." "No need," Sam replied gruffly. "Some wrongs need righting, that's all." Sarah touched Jack's arm. "Do you want me to come with you?" Jack considered the offer, then shook his head. "This first moment should be just us. But after, I'll be right here," Sarah promised. Room 3 was a private veterinary recovery space, dimly lit and quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. In the center was a large padded bed where Max lay, IV lines connecting to his front leg, a lightweight blanket covering his thin frame. As Jack entered, Max's tail thumped weakly against the bed, once, twice, a greeting that transcended their years apart. "Hey, partner," Jack whispered, crossing to the bed and carefully sitting on its edge. "Quite an adventure we've had, huh?" Max's cloudy eyes fixed on Jack with unmistakable recognition. With evident effort, he lifted his head, resting it on Jack's thigh in a gesture so familiar it made Jack's heart constrict. "We did it," Jack continued, gently stroking the graying muzzle. "We're going home, both of us, together." Outside the room, medical and legal realities awaited. Max's terminal diagnosis, the unfolding investigation, the uncertain consequences of the night's events. But in this moment, none of that mattered. Jack Miller had found his partner, had kept his promise. Whatever time they had left would be spent together, where they belonged. Max sighed deeply, some essential tension releasing from his aged body as he settled more comfortably against Jack. It wasn't forgiveness. Dogs don't hold grudges the way humans do. It was something simpler and more profound. The contented recognition that his pack was complete again. Jack leaned down, pressing his forehead gently against Max's. "I've got you now, buddy," he whispered, "and I'm never letting go again." 3 days after the raid on the Malibu facility, Jack sat in Judge Martha Winter's chambers, his weathered hands cradling a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Across the desk, Martha reviewed documents with the methodical precision that had defined her judicial career, occasionally making notes in the margins. "The evidence is substantial," she said finally, removing her reading glasses. "Detective Torres has built a compelling case. Hayes' attempts to claim executive privilege and national security exemptions won't hold up under scrutiny." "But," Jack prompted, sensing her reservation. Martha sighed. "But these cases are never simple, Jack. Hayes has connections throughout the justice system. He's already secured top-tier legal representation and is framing this as a legitimate research program that was misunderstood by disgruntled employees and an emotionally distraught former handler." "The videos speak for themselves," Jack argued. "You can literally see them training dogs to ignore specific evidence." "I know, and that evidence will eventually prevail in court." The question is whether you'll be around to see it." Martha's expression softened with concern. "Hayes is pushing hard for charges against you. Breaking and entering, theft of government property, conspiracy. At your age, even a minimal sentence could be effectively life." Jack set the coffee cup aside. "I knew the risks when I went in. No regrets." "Your daughter has been calling me," Martha revealed. "She's worried about potential prosecution. She's also been digging into the legal framework that allowed this program to exist in the first place." "Sarah's always been thorough," Jack acknowledged with a hint of pride. "Even as a kid, she'd never let anything go until she understood it completely." "She gets that from you," Martha observed. "Which brings me to the reason I asked you here today." "The district attorney is willing to consider a deal." Jack straightened. "What kind of deal?" "Immunity from prosecution in exchange for your testimony about the program and your experiences with Max. No charges, no trial, but full cooperation with the ongoing investigation." Martha leaned forward. "It's a good offer, Jack. One you should seriously consider." "And Hayes, Mercer, the others involved?" "The investigation is expanding daily. 3 more canine handlers have come forward with similar stories about dogs being separated under suspicious circumstances. The FBI is reviewing dozens of cases where these retrained dogs participated in evidence collection." Martha allowed herself a small smile. "The dam has broken, Jack. The question now is whether you want to risk being swept away in the flood." Jack considered the offer, thinking of Max waiting at Sarah's apartment, each day a precious gift given his prognosis. "I'll cooperate. But I have conditions of my own." "Name them." "Full immunity for Linda Carson and the others who helped rescue the dogs. Expedited legal transfer of Max and the other 3 dogs to approved homes. No more bureaucratic limbo. And a comprehensive review of all canine retirement protocols nationwide." Martha made notes. "The first 2 are achievable. The third is beyond local jurisdiction, but Senator Lieberman from the Judiciary Committee has expressed interest in holding hearings. Your testimony could be instrumental in driving policy changes." "Then we have a deal," Jack decided. "Though I doubt Hayes will go quietly." "He won't," Martha agreed. "In fact, his team is already building a counter-narrative. They're claiming the program was designed to enhance detection capabilities, not corrupt them. They're painting you as a disgruntled former officer with a personal vendetta." "Let them," Jack said with unexpected serenity. "The truth is, in those videos, in the medical records, in the dogs themselves, Hayes can spin whatever tale he wants, but facts are stubborn things." Martha smiled at the quote. "John Adams, you always did have an appreciation for history." 30 years in law enforcement teaches you that the truth eventually surfaces," Jack replied. "Sometimes it just needs a little help." As Jack left the courthouse, he found Sarah waiting by her car, her professional attire suggesting she'd taken time from work to meet him. The gesture touched him more than he could express. "How did it go?" she asked as he approached. "Immunity deal," Jack reported. "Full cooperation in exchange for no charges." Relief washed over Sarah's face. "Thank God. I was preparing bail arguments just in case." "Still looking out for your old man," Jack observed with a hint of a smile. "Some things never change." "Some things do," Sarah countered, opening the passenger door for him. "I filed my resignation at the firm, effective immediately." Jack paused halfway into the car. "Because of Thomas?" "Because of everything," Sarah replied, circling to the driver's side. "The firm's complicity, Thomas's involvement, the ethical compromises I didn't see or chose not to see. I can't be part of that system anymore." As they drove through downtown Lakewood, Jack processed this unexpected development. "What will you do now?" "I've accepted a position with the Animal Legal Defense Fund," Sarah revealed. "They're building a dedicated division for service animal advocacy, proper retirement protocols, handler rights, medical support systems. They need someone who understands both the legal frameworks and the personal stakes. Jack studied his daughter's profile, seeing Martha in her determined expression and hearing echoes of his own principles in her words. "Your mother would be proud," he said quietly. "I know I am." Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I should have believed you, Dad. All those years I thought you were just unable to move on. I didn't understand what Max meant to you." "I didn't make it easy to understand," Jack admitted. "After your mother died, I retreated into the search for Max instead of being there for you. It was easier to focus on a concrete mission than to deal with all the loss." "We both made mistakes," Sarah acknowledged. "But we've got a second chance now. All three of us do, for however long we have." The "however long" hung between them, the unspoken reality of Max's terminal diagnosis coloring even this moment of reconciliation. The veterinary oncologist had been clear. The brain tumor was inoperable, the seizures would increase in frequency and severity, and Max likely had only months, possibly weeks of quality life remaining. When they arrived at Sarah's apartment, a temporary arrangement while Jack's house was being prepared for Max's return, they found Linda Carson sitting on the floor beside Max's bed, gently brushing his coat while speaking to him in soft tones. The German shepherd's tail thumped weakly at their entrance, his eyes brightening despite his evident fatigue. "He ate a little chicken and rice," Linda reported, rising to greet them. "And we went for a short walk around the building. Dr. Abrams called to check his medication schedule." "Thank you for staying with him," Sarah said warmly. "I know you have your own concerns to deal with." Linda's employment at Sunrise Hills had been terminated, of course, but the immunity deal would protect her from legal consequences. Still, finding new work in her field would be challenging given the circumstances. "Max is good company," Linda replied simply. "Besides, I needed to be away from the news for a while." "They're calling it Canine Gate now. Every channel has something about the scandal." Jack lowered himself carefully to the floor beside Max, who immediately shifted to press against him. "What's the public reaction?" "Outrage, mostly," Linda reported. "Nobody likes the idea of police dogs being manipulated, especially not for political protection. Hayes is doing damage control, but it's not going well for him. 3 more departments have come forward to audit their canine programs after discovering connections to Sunrise Hills." "And the other dogs?" Jack asked. "The ones we rescued?" "The Belgian Malinois had his surgery yesterday. Prognosis is good, though he'll need physical therapy. The other shepherds are with Sam temporarily while their former handlers are located." Linda gathered her things, preparing to leave. "Detective Torres wants to meet with you tomorrow." Said there have been developments in the case. After Linda departed, Jack remained on the floor with Max, the physical connection seeming to comfort them both. Sarah joined them, sitting cross-legged nearby. "The contractors finish at the house tomorrow," she informed him. "The ramp is installed, and they've set up the main floor bedroom as you requested. You and Max can go home whenever you feel ready." Home. The word carried new weight now. For 7 years, Jack's house had been merely a base of operations for his search, not a true home. The prospect of returning there with Max, of resuming some semblance of their partnership for whatever time remained, filled him with bittersweet anticipation. "There's something else," Sarah continued, her tone cautious. "Dr. Abrams called while you were with Judge Winters. He's consulted with a specialist about Max's condition." Jack tensed, prepared for worse news. "And?" "There's an experimental treatment protocol that might slow the tumor's growth. Not a cure," Sarah clarified quickly, "but potentially more quality time. The specialist is flying in from Colorado next week to evaluate Max's candidacy." Hope was a dangerous thing after so many years of disappointment, but Jack couldn't help the spark that ignited in his chest. "What are the odds?" Dr. Abrams was careful not to offer specifics. The treatment is still in trials, and Max's age and overall condition are complicating factors. Sarah reached out, resting her hand on Max's flank. But he thinks it's worth exploring. Jack nodded, unwilling to trust his voice. Max shifted, resting his chin on Jack's knee with a deep sigh that seemed to contain all the weariness of their years apart. "One day at a time," Jack managed finally. "That's all any of us can do." The following morning brought Detective Torres to Sarah's apartment, bearing news and a cardboard file box. "The investigation is accelerating," Torres reported after declining coffee. "Hayes's political allies are abandoning him, and 3 more Sunrise Hills employees have come forward with documentation. The FBI has taken over as lead agency, given the interstate implications." "Interstate?" Sarah questioned. Turns out Sunrise Hills was just one of several facilities. They've identified similar operations in Arizona and Nevada, all linked to Hayes's network. Torres placed the box on the coffee table. "But that's not why I'm here. We've been processing evidence from the Malibu location, and we found something you should have." Jack opened the box to find neatly organized files, training records, medical charts, and, most surprisingly, a collection of personal items. Max's original service collar and badge, photographs of Jack and Max during their working years, commendation certificates, and even the small plush toy Max had favored during downtime at the station. "They kept everything," Jack said wonderingly, lifting the collar with its polished badge. "All these years." "Not just kept," Torres corrected. "Documented, cataloged, studied. According to Dr. Chen, they were researching the handler K9 bond, trying to understand what made certain partnerships exceptional. Your connection with Max was apparently of particular interest to them. They studied our relationship while deliberately destroying it," Jack observed bitterly. "That's almost worse than if they'd simply discarded these things." Torres nodded grimly. "Hayes believed he could quantify and replicate the bond between handler and dog, then manipulate it for his purposes. But he fundamentally misunderstood what he was dealing with." Jack sifted through the box's contents, memories flooding back with each item. Finally, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. Inside was Max's Medal of Valor, awarded after he had detected an explosive device at a crowded public event, potentially saving dozens of lives. "He earned this," Jack said softly, showing the medal to Sarah. "Youngest K9 in department history to receive it." Max, who had been watching the proceedings from his bed, pricked his ears at Jack's tone. With evident effort, he rose and made his way to Jack's side, examining the items spread across the coffee table with cautious interest. When he spotted the plush toy, a simple blue rabbit now faded and worn, his tail wagged with unexpected vigor. "He remembers," Sarah marveled, as Max gently took the toy in his mouth, the familiar comfort object triggering something deep in his memory. "Dogs don't forget," Torres said with quiet certainty. "Not the important things." After Torres departed, Jack and Sarah spent the morning going through the recovered items, Jack sharing stories behind each photograph and commendation. For the first time in years, he spoke freely about his working life with Max, the memories no longer tainted exclusively by loss and separation. Max remained close, alternating between dozing and alert attention, the blue rabbit toy never far from his reach. Despite his weakened condition, there were glimpses of the younger dog in his occasional playful moments and attentive gaze. That afternoon, they took Max to Jack's house, his home, for the first time in 7 years. The contractors had done excellent work. A gentle ramp replaced the front steps, area rugs provided secure footing over slippery hardwood, and the main floor had been reorganized to eliminate Max's need to navigate stairs. Max entered cautiously, sniffing every surface as if attempting to reconcile present reality with distant memory. Jack followed patiently, allowing Max to explore at his own pace. When they reached the living room, Max suddenly froze. his attention fixed on the fireplace mantel. Jack followed his gaze to the framed photograph that had occupied the same spot for 7 years. Max, in his service vest, sitting proudly beside Jack at a department ceremony. The dog looked from the photograph to Jack and back again, making a connection across time. "That's us, buddy," Jack confirmed softly. "Been waiting for you to come home and see it." Max circled the room once more before settling on the large orthopedic dog bed positioned near Jack's favorite armchair, a perfect recreation of their former evening routine. He sighed deeply, a sound of contentment that brought tears to Jack's eyes. Sarah, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, wiped her own eyes. "I think he knows he's home." That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner in the kitchen, Jack sat beside Max's bed, one hand resting on the dog's flank, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. The setting sun cast the room in golden light, illuminating dust motes that danced in lazy spirals above them. "We made it, Max," Jack murmured. "Against all odds, all these years later, we found our way back to each other." Max opened his eyes, meeting Jack's gaze with a clarity that transcended his illness and age. In that moment, the 7 years of separation seemed to compress and dissolve, leaving only the essential truth of their connection, a bond that neither time nor distance nor deliberate interference had managed to break. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Max's health, the ongoing investigation, the public scrutiny, they would face them together, as they always should have been. For now, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 1 year later, Jack Miller eased himself onto the wooden bench overlooking Lakewood Park's duck pond, his movements deliberate but fluid, the result of physical therapy sessions he'd finally agreed to attend at Sarah's insistence. The late summer air carried the scent of freshly mown grass and distant barbecues, families taking advantage of the perfect weekend weather. Beside him on the bench sat a framed photograph. Max in his service vest, gray muzzle raised proudly, eyes bright despite the illness that had claimed him 3 months after their reunion. The image captured during those precious final weeks showed a dog who, despite physical decline, had reclaimed his dignity and purpose in the time they'd had together. Jack adjusted the photograph's position, ensuring it caught the sunlight just right. "Good spot, isn't it, buddy? You always did like watching the ducks." In the distance, Sarah approached along the park path, accompanied by a slender woman Jack recognized as Congresswoman Eleanor Davis, recently appointed chair of the House Subcommittee on Law Enforcement Resources. They were deep in conversation, Sarah gesturing emphatically in the way she did when making a critical point. The past year had transformed Sarah in ways Jack could never have anticipated. Her resignation from the corporate law firm had led to not just a new job, but a crusade. The Animal Legal Defense Fund position had quickly evolved into a leadership role as the Max Miller Foundation took shape, an organization dedicated to reforming police K-9 retirement protocols and ensuring proper care for service animals. "Dad," Sarah called as they drew closer. "Sorry we're late. The meeting with the Police Chiefs Association ran longer than expected." Jack waved away the apology. "Parks don't close." "I've been enjoying the view." Congresswoman Davis extended her hand. "Mr. Miller, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your testimony before our committee was incredibly powerful." Jack shook her hand, nodding toward Sarah. "My daughter does the heavy lifting these days. I just tell Max's story." "And that story has changed the landscape," Davis insisted. The Service Animal Retirement and Care Act, Max's law, passed the House yesterday with overwhelming bipartisan support. The Senate vote is scheduled for next week, and all indications suggest it will pass easily. Pride swelled in Jack's chest, though he maintained his usual reserved demeanor. "Good to hear. Long overdue." Sarah sat beside him, her hand resting briefly on the framed photograph. The final version includes everything we fought for: handler priority for adoption, medical support funding, oversight committees for research involving service animals, criminal penalties for mistreatment. Senator Hayes must be thrilled, Jack remarked dryly. Davis's expression hardened. Hayes won't be voting on anything for quite some time. The federal indictment added 3 more counts last week. His trial begins in October. The investigation that had begun with Max's rescue had expanded far beyond anyone's initial expectations. What started as an inquiry into K-9 training manipulation had uncovered a sprawling network of corruption, with Hayes at its center. The K-9 Gate scandal, as the media had dubbed it, had already resulted in multiple resignations, several guilty pleas from lower-level participants, and a comprehensive review of K-9-based evidence in hundreds of criminal cases. And Richard Mercer? Jack inquired, having lost track of the various prosecutions. Took a plea deal last month, Sarah informed him. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. His testimony was apparently devastating for Hayes's defense strategy. Jack nodded, unsurprised. Men like Mercer always found a way to land on their feet, or at least to cushion their fall. And Thomas? Sarah's expression tightened slightly at the mention of her former fiancé. Disbarred in California. He's fighting it, of course, but the ethics violations were too substantial to ignore. Last I heard, he'd moved to Arizona to start over. The conversation paused as a young family passed by, their Labrador puppy straining at the leash with characteristic enthusiasm. Jack watched them with a bittersweet smile, memories of Max's younger days surfacing unbidden. "We should head to the ceremony," Davis reminded them gently. "They're expecting us at 3. Jack checked his watch and nodded, carefully lifting Max's photograph as he stood. Today marked the official opening of the Lakewood Police Department's K-9 Training and Retirement Center, a state-of-the-art facility built to replace the now shuttered Sunrise Hills. The center, funded partially by assets seized from Hayes's operation, would serve as both a training ground for new K-9 teams and a retirement home for service dogs whose handlers couldn't accommodate them. Sarah had been instrumental in designing the program, ensuring it incorporated the hard lessons learned from Max's experience. Jack had contributed as well, serving as a consultant on handler-dog bonding techniques and retirement transition protocols. "Will Sam be there?" Jack asked as they walked toward the parking lot. "Already there," Sarah confirmed. "He's been working with the new trainers all week." His rehabilitation has been remarkable, from department pariah to respected mentor in less than a year. Sam Wilson's expertise had proven invaluable to the investigation, his decades of experience helping to identify precisely how the legitimate training methods had been corrupted under Hayes's program. His redemption had come full circle when the new police chief had asked him to oversee the development of the department's reformed K-9 training standards. The dedication ceremony was well attended. Police officers, current and retired, local politicians, media representatives, and most importantly, K-9 handlers with their partners. Jack observed from a seat in the front row as speeches were given, ribbons were cut, and plans were outlined for the facility's future. When it came time for the unveiling of the center's memorial wall, the police chief called Jack to the podium. He approached slowly, Max's photograph still in his hands, conscious of the symbolism of the moment. "This center represents many things," Jack began, his voice stronger than his aging frame might suggest. "Progress, accountability, justice. But at its heart, it represents recognition. Recognition that the bond between a handler and their K-9 partner is sacred and deserving of respect." He gestured to the covered wall behind him. "Every dog memorialized here served with distinction, with courage, with unwavering loyalty. They weren't equipment to be discarded when no longer useful. They were officers, partners, family." At his nod, the chief pulled the cord, revealing a black granite wall etched with the names and images of dozens of K-9 officers who had served the department over its history. At the center, slightly larger than the others, was Max's image, captured in his prime, alert and dignified. Max was exceptional, Jack continued, but his story is not unique. Every handler here understands what these partners mean to us. What's changing today is that the system is finally catching up to what we've always known. As Jack returned to his seat, handlers and their K-9 partners formed a line, passing the wall in a solemn procession that served as both tribute and promise, acknowledgement of the past and commitment to a better future. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed toward the reception area, Linda Carson approached Jack, her new service uniform still looking slightly unfamiliar on her. Her appointment as the center's first director of retirement services had been unanimously approved by the Oversight Committee. The Belgian Malinois from Malibu, Rex, got placed yesterday, she reported with evident satisfaction. His new family has 2 acres fenced, experience with service dogs, and the financial resources for his ongoing medical needs. "That's the last of them, isn't it?" Jack asked. All 4 dogs rescued that night had survived, though their paths had diverged. 2 had been reunited with former handlers. 1 had been adopted by Dr. Chen, and now Rex had found his forever home. Linda nodded. "Full circle, though we've already got 3 new candidates for the retirement program next month." Jack surveyed the new facility with its spacious kennels, rehabilitation areas, and handler accommodation suites. "They'll be in good hands." "The best," Linda agreed. "We've implemented every recommendation from the Foundation's report. No dog will ever be treated as expendable again, not on my watch." As Linda was called away to address a question from a visiting official, Sarah rejoined her father. "Representative Davis wants us in D.C. next month for the bill signing, assuming it passes the Senate." "Another trip?" Jack asked, though without real complaint. The past year had seen him travel more than the previous decade combined. Testimony before Congress, consultations with police departments nationwide, speaking engagements at handler training programs. "The final one for a while, I promise," Sarah assured him. "After that, we can focus on the local implementation. The Foundation's moving into Phase 2, monitoring compliance, supporting departments with transition resources, establishing the medical fund." Jack nodded, still sometimes amazed by his daughter's transformation from corporate attorney to passionate advocate. She'd found her purpose in the aftermath of Max's story, channeling her legal expertise and newfound compassion into meaningful reform. "You've done good work, Sarah," he said simply, the understatement characteristic of his generation, but the pride unmistakable. "We did," she corrected, slipping her arm through his as they walked toward the reception. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. Your persistence, your testimony, your willingness to relive painful memories for the greater good." Jack glanced down at Max's photograph, still cradled in his free arm. He deserved nothing less. Later that evening, after the festivities had concluded and Sarah had departed for a dinner meeting with donors, Jack returned home to the house that had once again become a true home during his final months with Max. Though the dog was gone, his presence remained. In the bed still positioned near Jack's chair, in the photographs that now filled the walls, in the meaningful routines Jack had maintained even after Max's passing. Jack placed the framed ceremony photograph on the mantel alongside others chronicling their journey. Max as a young dog at graduation from K-9 training, Max receiving his Medal of Valor, Max during their brief but precious reunion, gray-muzzled but eyes still bright with recognition and love. "Quite a day, partner," Jack said to the empty room, settling into his chair with a sigh of contentment. "You'd have enjoyed the attention, I think. Always did perform well with an audience." Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the backyard where Max had spent his final days basking in the sun, playing gentle games that accommodated his declining strength, simply being a dog beloved by his person. Those days had been a gift Jack had once thought impossible, a chance to say goodbye properly, to complete their journey together with dignity and care. The phone rang, interrupting Jack's reverie. It was Detective Torres, now Lieutenant Torres, following his promotion after the Hayes investigation. "Thought you'd want to know," Torres began without preamble. "The Senate committee just released their recommendation, unanimous support for Max's law. It's going to pass, Jack." "Good news," Jack acknowledged, warmth spreading through his chest. "More than good, it's historic, the most comprehensive service animal protection legislation in American history." Torres paused. "He'd be proud, you know. Max. Somehow I think he'd understand what his story accomplished." After they hung up, Jack remained in his chair as darkness settled over the house, streetlights casting pools of gentle illumination through the windows. He thought about Torres's words, about the notion that Max might somehow comprehend the impact of his life and suffering. Dogs didn't think in terms of legacy or systemic change, of course. Max had lived in the moment, as all dogs do, with an uncomplicated devotion to his handler and his work. But in his simple, profound loyalty, and in Jack's refusal to abandon him despite seemingly insurmountable obstacles, they had together catalyzed something extraordinary. Because of Max, hundreds of police dogs would now retire with dignity, remaining with their handlers or being placed in suitable homes. Because of Max, research involving service animals would face strict ethical oversight. Because of Max, the bond between handler and dog was now legally recognized and protected. Jack's gaze fell on Max's old service vest, carefully preserved in a shadow box on the wall. The Lakewood Police Department patch was still visible, though faded with age, alongside the words Police K9 in bold lettering. "Still serving," Jack murmured. "Even now." The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 10, reminding Jack of his medication schedule, a regimen he followed faithfully these days, motivated by Sarah's need for his continued participation in their shared mission. He rose slowly, his joints protesting but functional, and made his way to the kitchen. On the refrigerator door, held by a magnet shaped like a dog bone, was the latest letter from a handler whose K9 partner had been reunited with him through the Foundation's advocacy. These letters arrived regularly now, each telling a story of justice finally served, of partnerships honored, of wrong made right. Jack traced the words with his finger, a smile tugging at his lips. The letter ended with a simple statement that captured everything their fight had been about. "Thanks to you, Jake came home." Home. Such a simple word for such a profound concept. As Jack prepared for bed that night, his thoughts drifted to the future. The Foundation was established and thriving under Sarah's leadership. Max's law was on the verge of passage. The new training center would serve as a model for departments nationwide. The work would continue, evolving to address new challenges, but the fundamental shift had occurred, a recognition that loyalty deserved loyalty in return. He placed Max's photograph on the nightstand, positioning it so it would catch the morning light. In the years since Max's passing, Jack had found a strange peace. The angry determination that had driven his 7-year search had transformed into something more constructive, a commitment to ensuring Max's suffering served a greater purpose. "Good night, buddy," Jack said softly to the photograph. "Job well done." Outside his window, stars punctuated the clear summer sky, eternal and unchanging. Somewhere in that vast continuity, Jack liked to imagine, the essence of his partner remained. The devotion, the courage, the simple joy of service that had defined Max's life. Not gone, just running ahead on the trail, as he always had. In Jack Miller's journey with Max, we find a reflection of our own lives. The battles worth fighting, the bonds worth preserving, and the power of never giving up, even when the world says we should. Like Jack, many of us have experienced that special connection that transcends words, whether with a beloved pet, a spouse, or a friend who's been there through life's storms. His story reminds us that age doesn't diminish our capacity to make a difference. Sometimes our most meaningful contributions come in our later years, drawing on a lifetime of wisdom and the courage to stand up for what's right. The legacy we leave isn't measured in wealth or titles, but in the lives we've touched and the wrongs we've helped make right. Max's story changed countless lives because one stubborn, loyal man refused to forget what mattered most. What special bond has shaped your life in ways others might not understand? And if you could create a lasting legacy from your most meaningful relationship, what would it look like? Share your story in the comments, because every connection deserves to be honored, and every act of loyalty deserves to be remembered.